So you want to learn how to ink like a pro? Well, let's go ahead and get that intro out of the way so you can learn the secrets of inking with texture. What's up guys, I'm J-Rod of battlebrawlerproductions, your new channel. Welcome. We craft amazing comic book style illustrations for a variety of different mediums. And today's a special video. As suggested by the title and the intro, we are going to be going over the secrets to inking with texture. This is the key to making your inked artworks look more realistic, more diverse, and add that sense of depth and the illusion of different surfaces. Inking is such a complex and challenging medium, and as someone who's known for their ink illustrations and have gone on quite the insane journey to master this medium, I am more than happy to share those secrets and tips with you. So I hope you guys walk away from this video feeling inspired and having the tools in your tool belt to make your artwork even better. So let's go over what we'll be inking today. This is the piece we're going to be bringing to life, and yes, I know this looks very overwhelming. This is a super detailed blue pencil on 11 by 17 smooth Bristol, which if you guys want to follow along, this very blue line sketch will be available on my ArtStation account for a digital download. That way you can follow along and practice your inking at home. There's a lot of textures in here, there's a lot of elements, there's a detailed background, a detailed foreground. We're really going to take our time and I'm going to explain all the different processes that I'll be doing so that you can learn how to use these textures and combine them to create an amazing illustration. So let's go ahead and take this to our board. Here are our tools that we'll be using. Several different size microns for line consistency, hatching, cross-hatching, and rendering. A Tombow Funiniski for varying line variety. A Speedball dip pen with a 512 nib for line variety. A couple different size brushes for filling in our 100% black. And 6 cartoony Sumi ink. This is one of my favorite Sumi inks. It's alcohol marker proof, as I plan to color this later on with alcohol markers, and I heavily recommend it for those who want a good solid manga style ink. Our board's taped so it doesn't warp, and we have our tools picked out. So let's go ahead and start inking this piece with the T-Rex and the Knight. So something I want to highlight that I'm doing is that I'm using a 003 Copic, and what I really like about this is the smallest fine liner that I own, and really take my time to go in and start to add that small detail. So one thing I want you guys to remember when you're inking is that you want to start thin, because you can always go thicker, you can't really go back. And so I'm going to be doing my outline first, and then I'm going to spot in my blacks. So I'm loving how this texture is coming out. It looks really, really good. But something I do want to highlight is, while I did talk about doing my line art first, I am keeping in mind where I want to put my blacks just for planning, even though that is the next stage. I'm kind of viewing some of these darker areas in here as just thicker black lines. That's really the key to inking, is finding out where to put your thick to thin lines to create the illusion of weight and mass. So one of the key things about this piece that I'm keeping in mind are the textures, not just of the dinosaur, but also of the leather and the armor. So how am I going to render that and make it separate? So it's understanding how the different materials reflect light. So I tend to not just think about ink as black and white, I tend to think about it as a layer of black and white mixed with grays. So there's a lot of gray in ink artwork, and it's just how you create that, and that's usually through the textures. That's something that can really affect the quality of your ink illustrations. I'm about to go in and ink the bar that's in the mouth, similar to like some horse reins, and even though I had a straight line here, even though it was slightly curved, I could have still used my curve ruler or French curve. I didn't do that, and part of the reason is because I wanted to have something that was a little uneven, a little more natural, because this is leather. Now this bar here in my mind is metal, so I'm going to not only render it as if it's metal, I'm going to treat its edges as if it's metal. So instead of using just my hand where I can get something that's a little wonky, I'm going to go in and I'm going to use a ruler. So I'm going to line up my ruler here, and then I'll do my line. Raised ruler, and what I recommend to use when you ink, especially with a dip pen, the edges, because they're rounded, I can do that by hand. I just gotta be very careful and make sure that I'm keeping that strength of the metal. So now what I'm gonna do is use my stencil. Now I didn't use a stencil with the two circles here, and that's because they were hidden enough where I could just do it by hand and I felt confident. But these guys being open and you see the full circle and it's completely unhindered, I'm gonna be using the same stencil that I used to make them, but instead of doing the exact same size, which was this size for this one, I'm gonna go up one. I often find that going that extra circle up will really help with the whole look of the piece. If you go too small, it looks weird, but if you go one bigger, it looks just right. So here's our knight done up with my dip pen, because there was some extreme variety of lines that I really wanted to get with my dip pen, so I used my Sumi ink. And I want to point out that I actually made a mistake. This line right here is way too thick. And what I mean by that is, remember how I talked about our light sources coming in this way? Well, that's why I did the lighting on the metal this way, so that I can reflect that with these bumps here. I made this line too thick because the light source would actually make this thinner. This type of line width is done if the lighting was coming in this way, which also wouldn't make sense because I did the thicker lines on the shield correct. So what I'm gonna do, and this is a technique I've seen artists like Andy Kubert and Joe Kubert use, is to take a X-Acto knife, and we're gonna go in and we're actually gonna scrape off the ink, which is very nerve-wracking. So I'm gonna be very careful with it. I'm gonna scrape it down and then re-ink it. Let's see how that goes. I want to color this later on with alcohol markers, so that leads me with a few challenges, because anything that I use would essentially create a discoloring between the paper and whatever I put on top, so when the markers go, it just won't look right. So I'm thinking, what about absorbent ground? So I thought, let's see how that would look. So I did a test swatch right here with some ink and alcohol markers, and I did apply it. You can see there's quite a bit showing through, but I thought, you know what, this will at least give me a good solid test. So I did some alcohol markers, I did some ink. The markers did not cause the ink to bleed on top of it, which is really good. And this seam line here honestly isn't that bad. I may just have to change up the rendering style a little bit and keep in mind where I put these areas in, but I think this is a pretty solid, genuinely good fix for this situation. Let's go ahead and do that. And here we are, and outside of a couple small, just little tiny details that only really I'm going to be the one that's going to hyper focus on, we're pretty much done with the knight itself. So our T-Rex is looking really good. I absolutely love how all of the texturing is coming along. So I'm actually going to go ahead and ink the grass. Then, after I get that in place, because it interacts and it actually goes in front of, because remember, when you step in grass, it has an overlapping feature to it. So I want to capture that because that's going to be realistic. It's going to add a sense of realism, and that's how real life works. You know, we're illustrators. We are trying to take what's in real life and put it onto the page. I'm going to go in and start inking thick grass. Alright guys, the grass is done. I also went in and decided to do the foot while I was at it since I had the grass at the proper level. And yeah, this thing is looking good. Now we're not quite done with the grass. I'm going to take a break for a minute so we can go in and do the shading on the T-Rex. Also going to go in and fill in some of these scales to create a black pattern that our reference had. Really excited to do that as well. Accentuated to give it now the value. So you can see in here how we have that value in the crest. Yeah, we're going to do that everywhere. Want to get the T-Rex all done, then do the grass, and then start working on the background. So really excited about this. Let's go ahead and get into that. Taking a break for a minute just to show you guys what I mean by the shading and the texturing. You see here, this is texturing. This creates the illusion of a scale pattern, but this is the shading. This is really where we add that sense of depth and shadow and lighting, especially like in this area right here. I really love how this looks, this really subtle gradient. This area right here and how this can be very challenging. So I actually got a bit of some tracing paper and just did a quick little test just to see how I feel like shading this would look. And I really like this rough pattern that I have here to really match our reference and our models. I think that would be a great way to go in and continue this effect that we have here on some of these more challenging areas. Love how this looks. So now I can go in, and then I have these patterns set. I can now shade everything. So I can add in the value to the body, the tail, and the leg, just like I did with the rest of the T-Rex. I'm gonna have to pretty much shade each scale almost individually. And that's because I can't make too big of a stroke with my pen because I do run the risk of flattening out these protrusions of the scale. So this is something I want to keep in mind and something I'm letting you guys know. Alright, here we are at an update, and I absolutely love how this looks. Just going in and adding all of these shaded lines like this, creating the cross hatching and the hatching is not only so relaxing, it's incredibly rewarding because as you can see, I'm going in and I'm pulling the shadow to create the illusion of shading and depth in the piece. Our T-Rex is done. Our knight is done. Now we got to go in and add the shading and the shadow to the grass. So remember, our light source is right here. So there would be a shadow on the grass. So normally I would use the 003 Copic. However, I think I'm going to use the 005 Micron. And then I also will be able to then move on to the background. Let's go ahead and work on the grass. I'm almost done. I got a little more shading to do in the trees. I got a little more texture work. I actually have burnt through another 03, so that's 2 for this one project. But man, this is really coming together in such a great way. And we're done. Guys, I did it. I actually did it. Oh my gosh. It's done. It's completed. Oh my gosh. I actually did it. Wow. And we're done. Guys, this is my most detailed piece I have ever made. Let's go ahead and do a grand reveal right now. Seriously, I am so proud with how this piece came out. I love how it looks. This is me pushing my craft even further. You know I love a challenge, and I'm happy to announce that this piece has been accepted into the Imagine Museum in St. Pete for their Fantasy World exhibit. So if you're in the Tampa, St. Pete area, you can stop by and see this piece in person. This is my favorite piece I've made this year, and then I'm going to be doing copies of this piece, so we'll have the posters available for you to purchase through my link in the description down below. You can get physical and digital posters. You can also purchase the original Blue Line sketches to practice your inking with, and I'm also going to have posters available that you can color yourself, because we'll be doing a sequel video to this where we're going to color it with watercolors and alcohol markers. So really excited to announce that. Hopefully you guys will be able to come to the museum to see this in person. I am so proud of this piece, and thank you guys so much for watching this very long video showing the art of inking, how to use textures in your artwork, how to craft detailed illustrations through the medium of ink. I am so proud with how this came out. Again, posters are available in the description. Go ahead and check them out while they last. Very, very proud of this piece, and we are going to continue this level of quality with the coloring and more original artworks done in this style. So stay tuned for that. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for that future awesome content, and remember, I'm J-Rod of BattleBrawlerproductions. I draw a pound my own soul. Thank you all so much for watching, and keep